taking the floor about the first movement, so I'm used to this. Members of Parliament, Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure indeed to be your guest at this moment of time. It's late afternoon, and I'm very honored to have been invited by the European movement to address this distinguished and partially young audience. I was invited to deliver a speech on the economic governance in the euro area and beyond the euro area of the whole European Union. I was given an amount of time which is ridiculous. 50 minutes. That's the normal length of my preliminary remarks before starting to deliver a speech. So I will have to stick exactly to the boundaries of the duty which has been put on me. So I will describe, although a greater number of you must know what I have to describe, the economic governance in the euro area and the European Union, and I would like to leave it to our Q&A session. I like questions, I don't like answers later on, in order to discuss related issues to the description of the economic governance of the euro area. 17 out of our 27 member states of the European Union are living together in a monetary union. And whenever you are living together in a monetary union, and if you want this monetary union to become a success, you have to make sure that you have at your disposal a common decentralized monetary policy. This monetary policy is with the European Central Bank. It's the task of the Central Bank to conduct an independent monetary policy, and it is my impression that the European Central Bank, since the very beginning of the launching of the euro, is implementing its mandate with great success, although from time to time one might have some marginal remarks to be given to the European Central Bank. But we are living in not only in a monetary union, we are living in an economic and monetary union. It is important for the monetary union to have this European Central Bank behaving in a very independent way, far away from negative governmental influences. But as an economic union, you have to make sure that you are able to deliver a better coordinated economic policy. For months now it appears that everyone in the European Union, and mainly at the level of the euro area, is discovering the virtues and the values of the coordination of economic policies. Some of the new, young, unexperienced leaders of the European Union are giving the impression that history was starting at the very moment when they were landing in Brussels, but history was on its road years, if not decades, before. Coordination of economic policies is nothing new. It's, I have to say, a rather old but unsuccessful story, because even before the crisis started, we had all the procedures in place and all the instruments at our disposal which are needed if you want to coordinate and to strengthen economic policies. Let me give you some examples. We have, since the start-up of the single currency, the broad economic policy guidelines, implemented partially with success or not implemented. It is not the absence of instruments which is explaining that they were not implemented in the needed dimension. It's the absence of political willingness to implement the decisions we have taken in common at the European level. So don't blame the instruments, blame those who are not making a full use of these instruments. We have since 1997 the Growth and Stability Pact. This Growth and Stability Pact had to be reformed in 2005 because this growth and stability was not taking sufficiently into account the adjustment an economic union needs to be able to produce when you are moving from one economic cycle to an adverse economic cycle. Hadn't we done so in 2005, Germany, France, 16 out of 17 member states apart Luxembourg would have paid sanctions in recent years. Was it a weakness of the Stability Pact? No. It was a taking into account of economic cycles. It was giving a way of reading economic reality by translating what you are reading into the economic coordination and sanction mechanisms. We have the World Economic Guidelines, we have the Growth and Stability Pact, we have also the so-called Cardiff process. This Cardiff process was about economic reform in order to secure macroeconomic stability and efficient working of product markets and capital markets. Who else than Mr. Blair, who was chairing the meeting, is remembering the Cardiff process? So don't be impressed when a new process is developed. Remember the fate of the processes we had. We have the so-called Luxembourg process. The Luxembourg process entailed, produced, provoked by the European Employment Summit of November 1997 and the Luxembourg process leading us to adopt year by year employment guidelines to be nationally detailed in so-called national employment action programs. Who apart me, who was chairing that meeting, is remembering that process? Don't be impressed when new processes are invented. We have the so-called Cologne process. Cologne process is about macroeconomic dialogue. Who else than Mr. Schröder, who was chairing that Cologne European Council, is remembering the Cologne process? We have the macroeconomic dialogue since we had this Cologne European Council. This macroeconomic dialogue is bringing together the Commission, the Council, the President of the European Central Bank, the President of the Eurogroup, and social partners. It's not a macroeconomic dialogue. It's an addition of two sometimes macroeconomic monologues. All those who are gathering in that room are presenting to the others and submitting to their short-lasting meditation. We have had the Lisbon process, 2000. Remember the Lisbon process. It was about having the European Union developing into the most competitive region of the world, which of course happened. And this Lisbon agenda was succeeded by the new EU 2020 process, so that we are supposed to agree on a multi-annual framework for policy coordination on the field of employment and social policy, as well as focus on EMU-related issues. And we have a resolution of the European Council of December 17, 1997 on the strengthening of the coordination of economic policies. Who else, apart me, who was chairing the meeting, is remembering this resolution of the European Council? But in this December 1997 Council resolution, you have all the elements which in this wide year, 2011, we're entering the Euro plus pact. Everything is in that 97 declaration, but nothing was done with the indications of this Council resolution of 97. And we have finally the Euro group, which was established already in 97 and which had its first meeting in Luxembourg, of course, in August, in June 98. This Eurogroup is an informal gathering of those of our European finance ministers having in common the single currency and trying to discuss in a more intimate and direct way the problems shared in common by those who have in common the common currency. But this Eurogroup is an informal group, and although it was set up under the rules of the Lisbon Treaty, it still remains, as Protocol 14 of the new treaty is saying, an informal group, which is, by the way, explaining why the chairman of the Euro group, contrary to his basic nature and temperament, has to adopt a low-key profile, because if you are the chairman of an informal body, you cannot circulate around everything which is said in this informal body, which is given, by the way, the impression that those who are sitting around that table were never aware about the problems which were occurring. I can tell you that, well, I have to make a long-term reference to the memoirs that we published in 2015. I have to tell you that all the problems which are on the table now were mentioned in very controversial debates amongst finance ministers of the Eurogroup years ago. In the case of Ireland, we were drawing the attention of our Irish colleagues, which are Irish friends, to we, not them, we and us, not them. We were drawing their attention to the phenomena which were happening in the real estate sector. We were telling our Greek friends that something was underway which would lead them and us to awful consequences if no counter-reaction would be adopted. We were drawing their attention to the loss of competitiveness over the last, over the period in between the joint the Euro area. We were discussing Spain, the real estate problem in Spain. We were discussing other problems, and although committed, as they are now, to a stronger coordination of economic policies, ministers of that country very often rejected the idea, the temptation of the others to interfere in their domestic affairs. There are no domestic affairs in a moment to you. The affairs of the one are the affairs of the others. So we had all the instruments and all the procedures needed in place, and then occurred the crisis, and we could easily see that the instruments we had in place, that the procedures we had in place were not sufficient to formulate a comprehensive response to the global crisis which affected the entire world, and of course the European monetary area, as we have discovered and as we are still discovering that we are at the epicenter of the global crisis in an, I have to say, unjustified way, because we are not the great sinners you can observe worldwide. We have a budget deficit which is by far less high than the budget deficit of Japan or the US. We have a public debt level which is by far lower than the levels the US, Japan and others are producing in a continuous rhythm, in a way that even Standard & Poor's yesterday or the day before yesterday, in a remarkable return to common sense, did criticize months and years after having criticized in a very often unjustified way the situation of several of the member states of the Euro area. So we had the instruments, but we had no no response, because the financial crisis of the late 2008 was the spark for the most serious economic slowdown since World War II. Unexpected, but it was there. The current global economic crisis, not only the one we had, but the one we are in, was triggered by a financial crisis caused by strife for short-term profits. Don't forget that the real reason for the mess we are in is the strife for short-term profits, very often, if not always, totally and not partially unjustified, because not related to economic performance and to social wisdom. What started at that period as a financial liquidity crisis quickly made its way into the real economy, triggering an unprecedented collapse in world trade, widespread job losses, and the first contraction in the global economy since the Second World War. The contraction was about 2%, 2.1% worldwide, and about 4.2% in the European Union. And as a consequence of all this, unemployment rose sharply, reaching a post-war record of 8.7% in the OECD area. That means an extra 17 million people out of job by comparison for 2010-2008, mainly affecting young people, which of course is not without influence on the atmospheric situation we are facing in the whole of the European Union. Governments recognized, I must say, in a speedy way, the severity of the real economy situation, and had to face a possible collapse of key financial institutions. Due to the interconnectivity of financial players, the whole global financial system was in danger. So governments were obliged to borrow heavily during the crisis to keep financial institutions afloat and to stimulate activity. Remember that by the end of 2008, the European Council decided to launch a large fiscal stimulus program known but forgotten under the name of European recovery plan. This action was without any other option. This action was strictly and vitally necessary, because we had to replace the weakness of the private demand by the re-strengthened, the step-up demand of the public sector. Although this action was necessary, it had as a result that we were shifting the problem of the weakness of the private sector on to the governments, leaving them with high levels of debt. And in addition to that, one has to acknowledge that the euro area countries have experienced divergent economic developments over a period of several years, leading us into a situation where the competitiveness divergences were developing in a larger way than would have been to the advantage of the euro area. Although I have to say that the competitiveness divergences we are observing at the level of the euro area are less pronounced than the divergences we are observing in other monetary unions like the one of the US. But as we are at the epicenter of the global crisis, and importance is given to our macroeconomic divergences and to our competitiveness divergences, which in no way can be brought into comparison with the non-importance which is given to the divergent developments we are observing in other parts of the world. It's in fact important to note that centralizing monetary policy as we are doing, with leaving fiscal and economic policies decentral, creates, from at least an economic policy point of view, the potential for an inherent conflict in the monetary union. The monetary arm by the treaty and in the treaty and via the implementation of the treaty is developed and has developed in an excellent way. But the fiscal policy and the economic policy, although we have the growth and stability pact and other instruments and tools, are underdeveloped. If you don't have a central government, and we don't have a central government in the EU, and we don't want to have, I don't want to have a central government at the EU level. And the Commission is not the central government. I have to say this to the disappointment of the Commission. The Commission is not the central government of the European Union. But if you don't have a central government, and if you don't want to have a central government, because people in Europe don't want to have a central government, you have to have common rules. And these common rules have to be observed by each and every one of our member states. That was the underlying explanation of the Growth and Stability Pact and of other elements of the two-layer approach to ensure fiscal stability among EMU member states we have since the very beginning. We have the Growth and Stability Pact for governments and the no bailout clause as a deterrent. The global crisis, however, showed that this framework was insufficient. The government's part of the fiscal framework did not prevent the fiscal situation becoming precarious in several countries, even before the emergence of the global financial and economic crisis. And the no bailout clause showed its limits. Once the governments of the euro area had to face a potential default of a member state, default case which was not the working assumption when we negotiated and signed the Maastricht Treaty. And in addition to that, the special rules of the bank was strictly in Europe in our way of assessing the country, the specific country situation, assessing the financial position of the country while ignoring potential problems in the banking sector can give a false impression of the relative health of the government's balance sheet. Moreover, banks are an important transmission channel through which fiscal problems in one country can spread over to other countries. We simply did not see that dimension of our living in common in the euro area. So what had to be done? I have to say that I'm sad from time to time when reading papers, when listening to parliaments, national and European, when they are criticizing the slow rhythm with whom the European Union and Euro area would have had to react to the global crisis. I'm an old guy, a real veteran, observing with kind regard to the activism of those who are of the younger date as far as their official functions are concerned. But never before, in such a small amount of time, was the European Union able to decide in an unexplored policy field like the one we had to re-put into order. As I said, the Growth and Stability Pact was revealing itself as being too weak. Not totally too weak, but partially too weak, because the willingness of those who had as a duty to implement this Growth and Stability Pact were never at the highest of their possible performance. And this was not the case for smaller member states, it was mainly the case for larger member states, which, by the way, is explaining why France and Germany now are insisting heavily on the improvement to be given to the Growth and Stability Pact. The sinners are always behaving that way. Once everyone has detected that you are a sinner, you want to show that you are an example of virtue that's a normal behavior. So the Commission has proposed a legislative package of 6 proposals known under the expression 6 Pact. That's the way we are trying to explain to citizens what we are talking about. This includes proposals to strengthen the Stability and Growth Pact, giving a higher importance to the exam to be given to the debt levels which were under dealt with in the former version of the pact. This 6th pact includes proposals to strengthen budgetary surveillance and the budgetary framework, and a proposal to prevent excessive macroeconomic imbalances. The most important of all these initiatives of this Commission, that initiatives being the one to prevent excessive macroeconomic imbalances, because in the 10 years since the launching of the euro, we were really continuously underestimating the long-term importance of the divergence of macroeconomic imbalances, although we have touched upon, as I said at the very beginning of this speech. I'm very happy that the Council has adopted these 6 proposals having been issued by the Commission. I'm very satisfied that the European Parliament yesterday adopted, as far as the Parliament is concerned, because 4 out of these proposals are in the domain of co-legislation, its own reports. I have to say that my impression is, although some nuances could be brought to what Parliament has decided yesterday, my impression is that, as a rule and in principle, the orientations being proposed by the Parliament are pointing in the right direction, and I really hope that we'll be able to reach an agreement between the Parliament and the Council before the end of June, and that in the June session of the European Council we could definitely adopt. It has to be transferred, of course, to the ECOFIN Council, the measures I'm speaking about. We have started this European semester with the publication of the first annual growth survey. These national reform programs and stability and convergence programs will have to be presented in one move, which is a difference in comparison to our procedures of recent years. To the European Commission before end of April, and in June the European Council will make country-specific recommendations, I'm quoting, if necessary. And I do think that this, of course, will be certainly necessary to give country-specific recommendations, not in a hidden room, not in a dark corner of the justice services, but public recommendations to be published in all the working languages of the European Union, in order to increase the knowledge of the others and in order to increase the national ownership when it comes to the implementation of these national and country-specific recommendations. We have finally adopted the Euro Pact, which will operate a kind of overarching structure, ensuring that adequate political attention and peer pressure exist to facilitate all actions. I have to say that I never was, and I'm not, and I will never be a strong believer in the virtues of this Euro Pact. As I was part of those who have adopted this pact, I will not criticize this pact. Would I have been alone, this would never have been adopted, because there is nothing new in this Euro Pact. We have to know that. We have to know that there is nothing new in the World Economic Guidelines, in the employment guidelines, in the proposals and recommendations made under the umbrella of the Lisbon agenda, all and under the umbrella of the Council resolution of December 1997, all these elements were on the table of the Commission and of the Council, but they were not taken from the table, and so they had to be re-put on the table in order once again to increase the national ownership and maybe the ownership of the heads of state and government, which were not so much interested in these issues before the crisis arrived. I have to say that this pact, in my interpretation, is not intended to be transformed in any kind of instrument of social dumping. This is not an invitation for a blind cut in social expenditure. It's also a part, the necessity we have to consolidate our public finances. It's also about education, about lifelong learning, about investment, about infrastructures, which are parts of the competitiveness of tomorrow. So I'm repeating myself in order to find a way to deliver a kind of conclusion. We have had an unprecedented, intense crisis. Therefore, we were obliged to prepare and to do extraordinary measures aiming to limit the fallout of the crisis on the real sector and to prevent its further spreading. And our primary goal has been to restore trust, which would enable equitable and sustainable growth, which in turn will generate employment. There was a need to react rapidly. Once liquidity disappears, we will have a window of a few days. And we had a window of a few days. Not weeks, not months, not years. We had a window of a few days, and we had to address consequently the problem which did occur. Consequently, and regretfully, intergovernmental mechanism was the only possible way to react on time. I regret this, but otherwise the answer to be given by the Europeans to the global crisis would not have been feasible and would not have been in a way which you could have easily articulated. Now we are facing the criticism, and I do share part of that criticism, that all this has been done by decision between the government and not in a community method inspired way. Some believe that it's weakens Europe and that intergovernmentalism is rightly perceived as anti-European. What we have done, to my view, strengthens Europe. The crisis has helped member states to make decisions, which has strengthened economic coordination and thus European integration. We have a strong, as I said at the beginning, monetary pillar in our economic and monetary union. Now we are strengthening what we should have done since the very beginning, the economic pillar. The decisions are not fully consistent with traditional forms of European decision making, but they are compatible with what had to be done. Over time, these intergovernmental steps which were taken have to be integrated in the normal community method. In the long run, the intergovernmental method, according to my view, is not the right way. It will not lead to success. It will lead, by the end, to prolonged European failure because it's not taking into account the real way of thinking Europe. So I'm, in fact, someone who is guilty for having taken part in the intergovernmental exercise. I'm someone who is wanting to transform this in what the real Europeans do believe in. I have had to stop here. We can easily discuss all the other problems related to the time we are in, ESM, ESSF, Portugal, Greece, and Ireland, but now I have really to stop. Thank you.